Okay, we start with Rashi Emor. Vayomer. Hold on 1 second. Hold on. Okay. Vayomer Adonai Moshe Emor al Kohanim b'nei Aaron. Say to the God said to Moshe, say to the Kohanim, the children of Aaron, the Amarta Aleim, and say to them, Nefesh lo yitama b'yamav, that you're not allowed to become tamei. Nefesh, for a dead body, lo yitama b'yamav. You're not allowed to become tamei amongst his people. This is the prohibition of a Kohen coming in contact with a dead body. Rashi says, Emor va'amarta. Why does it say both? Say and say. Ahazir gedolim al katanim. To tell adults with regard to minors. Meaning to say that adults are not allowed to, that even the minors are not allowed to become tamei. And say to the Kohanim, the children of Aaron, Yachol chalolim. I might think it applies even to Kohanim or chalolim, i.e., that their father had married a divorced woman and that's how, and that wasn't, or a zona, and they weren't allowed to. And so they were the offspring of that. So they lose the kahuna, they're called a chalolim. I might think they also cannot come in contact. It says the verse Kohanim, only the Kohanim. B'nei Aaron, af ba'imumim b'mashma. Even if the Kohen has a physical defect, and so he can serve, he's still included within this prohibition. B'nei Aaron, the sons of Aaron are included, v'lo b'nos Aaron, not the daughters of Aaron. He's not allowed to become tamei amongst his people. While the dead person is in the midst of a people, yatsa meis mitzvah. This excludes a meis mitzvah. Means if it's an unattended dead body, then he is allowed to, or he's actually required. He's required to come in contact with them. This idea, there's a lot of commentaries comment on this Rashi. The Rashi says, "Lahazir agadolim al katanim," to warn the adults that they're not allowed to have the children do it. But that's how it's usually understood. But Reb Elimelech says, "Lahazir hasagdolim hatzadikim al advarim hakatanim." It's to warn the tzadikim about even the small sins, because it says, Ki ameshi lavan. Hey, Eric, how you doing? I'll say this vort again once you're sitting, because this is from Reb Elimelech. So this is also, unfortunately, something that you could use, because you also often all the time meet with presidents and prime ministers. So you could say this vort from Reb Elimelech, because this is very relevant. It says in the Rashi to Parshas Emor, chapter 21, verse 1, God says to Moshe, say to the Kohanim b'nei Aaron, v'amarta aleim, and more v'amarta. It's a double expression. Say and you shall say. So why the double expression? Why and more v'amarta? So Rashi says, Rahazir agadolim al katanim. Rashi quotes the Gemara from Yevamos, and it's to warn, the way it's normally understood, is to warn the gedolim, the adults, that even their minor children who are Kohanim, they are not allowed to become tamei. If a Kohen is a little baby, he's also not allowed to come in contact with a dead body. Reb Elimelech says, not like that. Reb Elimelech says, he says, Lahazir es hagedolim. The gedolim doesn't mean the adults, but it means the tzadikim. To warn the tzadikim, al katanim, about the little matters, even the small sins. Meaning that tzaddik has to be especially careful about even a very minor sin. Because if you have a white silk garment, if you have a pure garment, a beautiful garment, then even if you have a little bit of dirt, it stands out. So if you have a person who's like a public figure, a person of great prominence, and he's so well respected, then even a little bit of dirt will stand out. And meaning to say, and with the light of the day, then also a small stain will show. So, and the person who merits to have clear eyes to see his own faults will see his own faults even when they are the smallest of the small. So Rabbi Melch is saying, means to say, it's to warn the great people that have to be careful even about the most minor of sins. That's Rabbi Melch's explanation. Rabbi Melch had a student called the Tiferes Shlomo, the Radomsker. The Radomsker said he had a message about this teaching from the Besht. And he said that the Besht told us that he says that the Besht, the Baal Shem Tov, explained that whoever is attached to a tzaddik, then that they're protected. Meaning to say, Hashem bless those who fear God, the Ketanim imagdolim. That's what it says. Yivarach Yirei Hashem Ketanim imagdolim. We say in the Hallel. So when the Ketanim are attached to the Gedolim, then they're going to be included in this blessing. And so even if the Ketanim are filled with sins, then they're going to get an aliyah through the service of the tzaddikim. And so therefore, that's what it means, that you have to give encouragement to the tzaddikim that they should take up the ketanim with them in their service of God. So that's what the Baal Shem Tov says. It's basically what the Hasidim did in these two approaches. But Rebbe Melch and the Baal Shem Tov, they took this verse, which seems esoteric and not relevant to our lives, that you have to warn the little babies not to come in contact with the dead body. And Rebbe Melch says it means that a tzaddik has to be so careful not to do even a very, very small sin, because the small sin on him is magnified because of his purity. And like if you have a white shirt and you have a stain, it shows up much more than if you have a black shirt with a stain. And the Radomsker, who's Rebbe Melch's Rebbe, a student, he quotes from the Baal Shem Tov that this Rashi means that the Gedolim have to be warned to take the Ketanim with them, that the tzaddikim have to take the people with them who are not tzaddikim to help them and to strengthen them. Another explanation about this phrase comes from this Rashi. Lahazir Agdolim Laktanim comes from lahazir. It doesn't mean to warn, but comes from the word zohar, that they should shine forth, meaning to say that the tzaddikim should shine forth with their actions and show the ketanim. So they should be a light to the ketanim. See, the Hasidim love this phrase. I'll say one more. The Porechas Alta Nitza says it means Lahazir Gedolim Aktanim. What does it mean? Lahazir Asa Gedolim, to warn the Gedolim, those who are the heads of the people. So, like if you're the Nasi or the head of one of the people who are considered a leader of the Jewish people, that they should sheyaktinu etzman. Lahazir Gedolim, to warn those who are like the heads of the community, to be ketanim, to humble themselves, that they shouldn't trample on the heads of the people. So they shouldn't be haughty. They shouldn't be arrogant over the people. This is a powerful phrase, a powerful idea. We have this phrase that we would have liked just ran through this Rashi, but the Hasidim don't let us do that. And one last one, this last one is that Lahazir Gedolim al Ketanim. What does that mean? That the Gedolim, i.e. the heads of the community, have this tremendous responsibility, that they're responsible for the Ketanim, that they need to always worry about the children, the schools, the education, that's their responsibility. That's their responsibility. So that's Lahazir Gedolim al Ketanim. Okay, fine. That was that Rashi. Now we're going to the next Rashi. And it says in the next pasuk, who can the Kohen become tamei for? Him l'sheiro karov elav. except for to the relative who is closest to him. We know Aviv to his mother, his father. We know Vitoach, his son, his daughter, and his brother. So that's who the Kohen is allowed to become Tamei for. Rashi says, "Ein Shero el Ishto." The Shero means his wife. That's who he's allowed to become Tamei for. Okay, next pasuk says, his sister is unmarried, his virgin sister, she was never married. For her, he can become Tamei. Rashi says, Hakrova, Rabo says Harusa. This includes an Arusa. Ish, that means she's betrothed, but she was never with a man, Mishkav. She never had relations. For her, he's obligated. He has to go to her funeral. He has to deal with it. Rashi says it's a mitzvah. Verse 4, a husband among his people shall not make himself impure to defile him. What does it mean? That this Kohen, Rashi says it means, let's say the Kohen married a woman who he wasn't allowed to. He's not allowed to marry a divorcee, grusha. So as long as he's married to her, he's not allowed to marry, so he's not allowed to go to her funeral. How are you doing, Eitan? Come on in. And so too, the literal verse, a man is not allowed to become tamei through his wife while she is botochi hamav. While there are those who can bury her, she'ena mes mitzvah. But ezesher amarti, but also she lechelo et chalo mikunasa. So the Kohen, he's not allowed to attend to her funeral as long as she's not a meis mitzvah. But if there's nobody to attend to it, then he has to do it. But otherwise, as long as this is somebody who's not allowed to marry, he's not allowed to go to her funeral. And if there's an unattended dead body, then he has to.
That's true in any
case,
right?
Yeah.
In this specific case.
Not just Rashi said that back in verse 1, he's not allowed to become tamei for his people, excluding a meis mitzvah. If there's an unattended dead body, even the Kohen Gadol going to serve in Yom Kippur has to go and attend to that dead body to serve it. Okay. Hold on 1 second. Okay, so now says the Rashi, the Kohens cannot make a bald spot on their heads. They cannot shave the corners of their beards. How you doing, Akiva? Baruch Hashem. Baruch Hashem. We're chapter 21, verse 5. Vayikra. 21, verse 5. Now the Kohen, after somebody dies, he's not allowed to make a bald spot. So, but we already had this verse in this past week's parsha. Rashi says, "Hello, Af Yisrael, who's our Kach?" The Jewish people themselves were warned about this. So the Gemara, so Rashi says, and because it says between Jewish people, between their eyes, I may think you're only liable. Hello, Arya. I might think you're only liable anywhere on your head. It says you're not liable anywhere else. So it says Berosham. The Yom you grab a chumash, Max. Yeah. The Yom Yisrael Kohanim, right there, right in front of you. No, to the left. Right there. Shkoyach, Max. So to tell us, anyway, we learned this Gemara in Makos. We had it to tell us the Gemara compares the psukim with the Kohen and the non-Kohen to tell us when he's how we learn out. But you're not allowed to shave in any of these places. And you can't shave the corner on the beard. But by the Jewish people, it says lo tashlis. You're not allowed to destroy it. So the Gemara Makos says, I might think you could cut it with a melakit or a tani, so like a different tool that you'll be liable. Therefore, it says lo yigolechu. You're not allowed to shave. You're only liable for a razor. So you're not allowed to shave your beard with a razor. You could do it with the scissors, You can do it with the cream, but you can't do it with the razor, and we learned from here. And this also, Viv Saram or Yisr Tu Sarat. That's we already had this in last week's parsha, when it says with their flesh, you cannot make, they cannot want to make a scratch. They used to after a death, they used to scratch their face. It says by the Jewish people, "V'ser nefesh lo titnu," not allowed to make a scratch. It already said it. So I might think, yeah. So this is what the Gemara Mako says. Yachol seret chamesh shritos lo yachayev el achas. I might think if he makes 5 scratches for 5 different dead bodies, he's only liable once. So the verse says, lo yisru tu saratis l'chayev al kol shrita v'shrita. For every scratch, you're going to be liable. And it also says in Gemara Makos, if you make 1 scratch for 5 people, you're liable 5 times. And we learned this when we discussed the Gemara 2 weeks ago, that you could say 1 piece of Lashon Hara about 1 community, and you could be liable for Lashon Hara. You say 1 sentence, you're liable for every single person in that community. So that community, the Jews of whatever, the Jews of, let's say somebody says, the Jews of Washington, D.C., they don't like to give charity. Well, guess what? 270,000 Jews here. So you just were Lashon Hara, you committed 270,000 prohibitions in that one time. So you just because you say about a lot of people doesn't mean it's not Lashon Hara. It's just the opposite. The sin is even greater. That's what we learned from this psukim in Makos. Okay, and then it says, Kedoshim yu Elohem, they shall be holy to their God. They shall be holy to their God. Al karcham yaktishum beitim bekach. Against their will, the court shall sanctify them in this manner. What does that mean? Meaning that even if they don't want to do this, the court should not let them get married. That it's the court's responsibility. Wow. So the court has to make sure they don't do it. This actually has happened to me a lot of times. I'm officiating at a levaya, and then the people are Kohanim. So a lot of Kohanim, even they're well-meaning, and even though they live like religious lives, they haven't learned the laws. So first of all, they say, okay, I'm here, and now I'm going to go to the relatives who I have. But it's prohibited. They want to go see like grandfather. And also, let's say then they have a grandchild is not allowed to go to his he's not allowed to be participating in the funeral. He has to stand, he can't go into the cemetery. Because it doesn't say here you can go to your grandfather's funeral, your grandmother's funeral. It only says to one of the 7 relatives, the father, mother, wife, brother, sister, son, daughter. But the Kohanim don't know this halacha. Or maybe they know, they don't care. So it says here, yeah, the court has to enforce it.
So are you supposed to point that out to people?
I mean, I tried a couple of times and it didn't go over well. So at this point, I'm like,
Sure.
what do you want me to do? The point is not at that moment. At that moment, it's almost too late because you have to tell them now. You have to study with them the Rashi when they're not in their moments of mourning so that they can understand and be mentally prepared. Because if they're expecting to go to the levaya of their grandfather and then they're just said you can't go, that's crushing. But if they have that mindset that they can never go, then they'll be prepared for it.
So if there's a service that's separate.
So yeah, that they can do. And in Israel, it's not a lot of cemeteries in Israel are set up like this. They have a derech Kohanim, they have a way for the Kohanim to go. But in America, it's much harder. America, the cemeteries are not set up for Kohanim. I know of Shalom, we had a path where Kohanim could go. Where Kohanim would be able to go.
So standing away. But
yeah, standing away, you have to be careful. There's no trees. Yeah, it's like you have to know what you're doing. And so in Israel they set it up that way, but in America they don't. They're not careful. Okay, now usually some funerals they do. So now here's the woman who the Kohen is not allowed to marry. Isha zona rachala lo yikachu. She's not allowed to marry a woman who's a zona or a chalala. You can't marry such a woman. Isha grusha, we'll see what that is. Rashi is going to tell us what it means. Isha grusha meisha, and a woman who's divorced. So he can't marry these three women. Because he has to be holy. So what's a zona? Anybody know what a zona is? Yeah, but that's not what it means here. You're right. In general, that's a prostitute, Akiva. But here, if only it was that most Kohanim wouldn't have a problem. Like, I'm not saying that no Jewish woman has been a prostitute, but I'm saying most of the women who are on the shidduch scene have not been prostitutes. It's usually people in the poorest segments of society are forced into that profession. But here it means, this is where it gets very, very, very tricky. It's shenevelas be'ilas Yisrael asurla. So an example is she has relations with a Jew who is forbidden to her. So that makes her what's called a zona. Prostitute is the wrong thing. A zona is a woman who had relations with a Jew who is forbidden to her, right? For example, somebody who let's say she had an adulterous relationship, or one of the ervas. Fine.
Relation with a single guy.
That I don't think makes an excellent question. But also, if she has relations with a nasin or a mamzer. So if she had relations with basically somebody was a mamzer, we know that's a person born from adulterous union, or if she had relations with somebody who was not Jewish, or somebody she wasn't allowed to marry. So now we also have a big problem. Let's say there's a woman who had relations with a non-Jew, and now she wants to marry a Kohen. That's very, very, very complicated, and a lot of Kohanim. So that's like, it's only a problem once they fall in love, and then they show up at my door, which has also happened a lot of times, and then they say, "Okay, what do we do?" So then we have to sit down and figure it out. But then it becomes complicated. But I believe that usually figure out a way. Trying to say something, Rabbi Yosef?
Just that when people
Rabbi Yosef is a Kohen, so he knows this stuff.
when a Kohen is about tshuva, and their wife that they're already with, went to university and probably did have relations with non-Jews. I've heard of a rabbi who just basically says, you're not for sure a Kohen, so we're not going to pursue that, because he didn't want them to get divorced, meaning it was a rumor that he heard from his aunts that they're Kohanim. So because they were so devout and they already had children, then he, anyway, just wanted to say that.
So you're correct. Basically, I once met with one of the biggest Rosh Yeshiva around. I don't want to say his name, and I was discussing these issues. And he said he used to work at Esha Torah, and they have 5 underground Haterim that they used to give. And one of the issues is they say, you're not really a Kohen. How do you know that you're really a Kohen? And because they prove you don't really have a tradition that you're a Kohen. They're able to figure that out. But then it's a big problem, because a lot of times the men, they're very proud of their kahuna. They don't want to say they're not a Kohen. Why would they want to say they're not a Kohen? They're proud of their kahuna. So then it becomes tricky. But
Rashi here is referring to a relations with a Jew is forbidden, so that you're saying the non-Jew, that's even obvious.
Yeah, if she has relations,
Source.
even with a person who's not Jewish,
Okay.
anyone who she's not allowed to marry, if she has relations with anyone who's not allowed to marry, she's going to be called a zona.
So those people who, let's say, they get a hector because they're not really a Kohen, so they can stay married, and they have to stop being called up to the Torah as a Kohen, right?
They're basically saying they're not a Kohen. And a lot of times they don't want to do that. Another way to approach is they're like, how do you know you really had relations? How do you know you really, or with, they have to be addressed on an individual level. There isn't like a blanket heter, but on an individual level, usually we can work something out, especially you want to bring people closer, they're coming together. Also, let me tell you something. If when you fall in love, it's very rare. So don't take that for granted. And And I don't say, okay, I'll fall in love again. No, that doesn't happen. You don't think it will happen. I mean, it could happen, but don't assume that you're going to be so lucky as to fall in love a second time. So it's something that everybody has to take seriously, all the rabbanim involved. It's not a simple matter, but usually we figure something out. I'd say in my rabbinate now more than 25 years, every single time somebody's come to me with this situation, we figure something out. In advance, the baseline is it's prohibited, but when push comes to shove, we're able to analyze it and figure something out. Okay, so yeah, just have to find a rabbi who's learned enough, who knows the complete scope of the Torah to understand why something may be allowed. It's not for just like person who's studied the Daf Yomi a couple of times. It's somebody who needs somebody who knows the whole shots at their fingertips, and who's a tremendous posek. Such a person is able to help us. Okay, so now the other type of woman who's disqualified is from a Kohen is a challah. What's a challah? Shenolda min hapsulim shebekun. That she was born from those unions. For example, she's the daughter of a widow who married the Kohen Gadol, or she's the daughter of a divorcee who married a Kohen Hedjo. So too, if she became right, so she became. If she became a chalala by having had relations with somebody who was disqualified to the kuna, basically, if a zona has relations with a Kohen, she becomes a chalala, and then if she has relations with Kohen again, she's in violation of two prohibitions. Okay, so that's this very tricky, but very relevant halacha. And now we come to the next pasuk. It says, "V'kidashto, you shall sanctify him." Who? Who are you sanctifying him? The Kohen, against his will. Shemora tzalagaresh. If he doesn't want to divorce this woman, he wasn't allowed to marry. Halkeyu v'yasreyu actually garesh. Strike him down, give him lashes, and chastise him until he divorces her. Wow, right? And then pasuk says, "Kidash." Hello, Michael. Because the bread of your God he has brought, kadosh yalach, he shall be holy for you. Ki kadosh ani Hashem mekadoshchem, because I am Hashem who makes you holy. Rashi says, kadosh yalach, nahog bo kedusha, treat him with holiness. This is the Kohen. You always have to treat the Kohen with holiness. So Elon here, he's a Kohen. You might think, oh, he's our buddy. We'll just whatever, we joke around with him. Here, Elon, carry my bags, do all this stuff for me. But I want you to know that you should be very, very careful before treating a Kohen like that. Because it says here in the Torah, Kadosh Yalach, he has to be holy. Meaning to say, Nahog bo Kedusha, you have to treat him with holiness. With Toach Rishon Makol Davar, he takes priority in all manners in which it's an honor to speak first, whether a matter of Torah or some other convocation, the Kohen has to speak first. Levarech Rishon, the Kohen should make the blessing first at the meal. The Kohen goes first, and that's the concept here. The Kohen goes first. So you might think, okay, he's just Elon. He's just one of the guys. No, he's not. He's not. He's a descendant of Aaron, and he's a direct descendant of Aaron. By dint of that, we have to treat him with more respect. Yes, he has more kavod because he's a direct descendant of Aaron. This is 100% against like the way of the world today. The way of the world is, okay, everybody's just the same. We're all ecumenical. We're all the same before God. But that's not what the Torah is saying. The Torah is telling us that the Kohen deserves more respect by virtue of when he was born. We have to give him more honor and more dignity. Doesn't mean the Kohen should walk around and lord it over us, but it's our responsibility. That's what it means to be a Jew, that we recognize that some people are born into a distinct role, and with that role comes more responsibility. So that's the Kohen. Yes, Elon.
Nowadays, like like the only thing I do like as a Kohen is this.
No, you're supposed to give the brach.
I do the first Aliyah, I'm like, but I don't do like it's not like the base of English, so it's not as much of a role as it was back in the base of English.
Well, the base of Mikdash will be, it could be rebuilt any second, and then you'll be having to do carbonas, but even until then.
It still applies as much, like.
Yeah, it applies. We have to give you more honor. You, for example, if we were gonna bench now, you would lead the benching. You would lead the benching. You're the Kohen, you lead the benching. You get the first Aliyah. That's, you give this to Birkas Kohanim. We all stopped in the davening and say, you give us the blessing. It's not just who you are, even though you're great in and of yourself, but it's what you represent. You represent the chain of tradition going back to Aaron. You are a direct descendant of Aaron. You are our link to Sinai, and that's something great which we don't take for granted, which we have tremendous appreciation that we're able to be here in the presence of Hashem, bringing down the blessing through you. That's why every time Elon comes into the davening in the morning, my heart lifts because I know we're going to get a bracha that morning. I will stop here and daven mincha. Shkoyach.